And now I'm excited to kick off today's event. It's not too late. How to navigate a career change with confidence, sponsored by Macquarie Group. Macquarie is a global financial group providing clients with asset management, retail and business banking, wealth management, leasing and asset financing, market access, commodity trading, renewables development, specialist advisory, capitalist raising, and principal investment. We're thrilled to be joined by Jennifer Coyle, the America's Chief Operating Officer at Macquarie Group, who is no stranger to career change. Jennifer will share how she navigated career pivots, how Macquarie's supportive culture helped her do just that, and her advice to others while contemplating a big move. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us today.
Thank you, Robin. It's really wonderful to be here. And I think this topic is always interesting because we all had to take steps to get where we're going. And it's great to hear different people's stories as to how they did it and how it can be relevant to them.
Yeah. So Jennifer, I'd like to start by asking you to share a bit about yourself and your role today at Macquarie Group.
Okay, so yes, my name is Jennifer Coyle. Interestingly, I'm calling today from the New York office that we have, but I'm also originally from Baltimore and I've lived in a bunch of cities, but currently call Nashville my primary home. So I've got a dual location, which is also interesting in the light of this working from home and a hybrid working environment. As the new role I took on about 6 months ago as the Chief Operating Officer for the Americas region of Macquarie. So that's where I've been for the past 6 months. And I know we'll go into a little more history beyond that, but it is certainly a new area for me. So it was a transition and very relevant to our topic today.
Yeah. So how did you get to where you are today?
Great question. Okay, so I think one of the biggest things that has always driven me is a desire to be challenged. And I think that's one of the key components probably for a lot of people on the call today is when you come to a point in your career where you need a new challenge. And that occurred to me several times. So there have been a lot of different opportunities where I've taken the leap to try something new. Starting probably, I guess, when I was around 30, I've been in traditional banking for a big number of years. And interestingly enough, because there's mostly women on this call, but a few gentlemen as well, is I was new to a group and I had, put a tick in my form at the end of the year. Back then we had paper forms that I would move internationally. And there was a role that came up in England. I was a junior of about 8 people, 7 men and me. I was young, they were older with families. And they said, we need someone to go start this business in Europe. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. I mean, I had no idea. I wasn't exactly the most tenured person in the group, but it was like, hey, if no one else is putting up their hand and it's an interesting opportunity, this is one way I can make a difference for myself and stand out as someone who's ready to be mobile. So I picked up my family and we moved to Europe. And that was the beginning of not moving back home for a long time because there's so many opportunities out there in the world. There's so much interest that I kept going with that and kept challenging myself along the way. So I went from, a company that I stayed with for 7 years who gave me various opportunities. And I think that's important to think about the culture of where you are. And moved to Chicago and down to Nashville and over to Australia a couple of times. And now I'm dual locating. But along the way, at that point, I stayed with a certain career path for a good number of years in those different companies, just tried different cultures until I found, I think, which is the best, my home at Macquarie, who's given me more opportunities within the same company so that I don't actually have to leave the company. I can try new adventures and new areas of growth for myself personally.
That's great. Europe, how exciting. And Australia. I'm jealous.
Back when we could travel, Robin. Back when we could travel a lot. It was much more interesting.
Well, today we're seeing more and more people, especially women, who are looking to change careers and industry. You just already said that your own path here is not defined as linear. So what's your advice for women who are thinking about making a career switch, but they're afraid that it's too late?
Well, first of all, and I'm sure everyone knows this, it's never too late. To be quite honest, I'm sure we all look back and say, oh, I wish I could try some of these new things. I look at my daughter's at college right now, and her world is so much broader than we had. And I hope that she doesn't pinhole herself into one certain industry and say, I need to do that for the next 30 years. number one, to keep yourself challenged, but number two, you bring so much more to the table at these new companies that you or industries that you go into with your background. I'd rather hire somebody here at Macquarie who probably didn't come from banking. I'd rather them come from a different industry and bring me those nuances that you brought to life, whether it's something social or digital or whatever your background and passion was. Bring that to Macquarie and we can build on that. I think that's similar to what a lot of people are feeling is they've got skills. Are they transferable? Absolutely. You don't have to stick with your industry. Stick with your passions and figure out where that leads you in the next role. So be bold when you're looking at, I'm sure there's a lot of different areas like Fairygodboss where people say, where should we look for roles? Well, look for roles that I maybe have some targeted words that are important to you as compared to when recruiters look at how do they target for people, what is your passion and how can you find that in different companies around the world. They could be small, they could be large, multinational, domestic, regional, but don't be afraid to put your name out there and network into those roles.
I love it. Networking. Great advice. What skills do you believe have served you best throughout your career, from managing assets to then managing people?
It's a great question. And my story will be different than others, right? But as I look back currently on what I did for a long period of time, people thought I was an expert in this. So whoever's on here from Macquarie, don't tell anybody, but people who thought I was an expert in my actual industry, the depth of knowledge I had about mining, because I financed mining assets, it was more about the people that I managed and worked with that really held my interest. So yes, I learned enough about my area of expertise to do my job, but my real passion and what continued to drive me forward was the team. I love the team I worked with. I love the people. I wanted to see them grow. I wanted to see them get new opportunities. So we'll talk about that later. But when people are looking at how do I move, make sure you have a supportive boss or manager. And when you say, I'm really more interested in, the financial aspects of this, or I'm really more interested in the marketing aspects, or perhaps I actually like dealing with tech more than I like dealing with people. Well, make sure you make those known. And that's what I think I did along the way when I started looking at different opportunities. I networked, showed my passion for the people and what I was doing, and then, attempted to land new roles. But I think 80% of it is networking in terms of finding what your passion is and finding people who are passionate about you. So I think I got one job offer over a lunch. This is in England, and the man was Scottish, and as someone else went to the bathroom, he said, I'd like to offer you a job. Would you come work for us? And I was like, oh, I would be happy to come talk to you about it. The same thing happened to me in Chicago when I was looking at a role in Nashville. The group was doing a Six Sigma project, and they happened to call me as, an SME in what I was doing. And again, during the dinner that evening when they were thanking me for, taking part in their project, they said, would you be interested in moving to Nashville and coming to work for us potentially? And I think, Robin, being open to those things is what helped me. But not everyone's mobile. So it doesn't have to be a move to another city. I just was one of those people who needs a change and needs a new challenge. And I think that those opportunities exist when you put yourself out there. And as I said, one was like a deal transaction lunch, and the second one was helping someone else move their business forward. And then they saw that I had the passion for leadership that really took me to the next level.
So can you tell us about a mistake you've made or a big risk that you've taken in your career journey and what you learned from it?
Yeah, absolutely. Twice, and maybe it's stupid, but again, risks that you take to really back yourself. And at Macquarie, we talk a lot about backing yourself and, giving yourself that love that that you can bring to something else. So the confidence that you'll make it. I quit my job. I'm trying to remember what year it was, probably 20 years ago. And I was raising 2 children by myself. And I think the boss at the time, he just looked at me like, he asked me to move to Atlanta. And I said, sorry, I'm not really mobile to move to Atlanta right now. And he's like, okay, well, then I'm gonna have to demote you and you're gonna work for someone else. And I thought about it for about 2 days and I just said, yeah, I'm okay. I think I'll take my chances. And I was like fluttering, butterflies. How am I going to do this? And I think my family thought I was crazy, as I probably was a little daunting. But I was like, no, I know my job. I know what I do and I know I'm good at it. And I'll find the right thing. It might take a while, but I'll find the right thing. And that took probably 3 or 4 months. And I'm sure I was nervous. I still remember being nervous about paying the bills and paying the mortgage and how am I going to make this work? And the right thing did come along. And I was impatient, but I had to hold my tongue, when you're talking to recruiters and they don't need to know you're desperate. And these days it's a very different story where I think people hold more of the power with all the openings that we have. But again, I was like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be on my terms and I'm not going to deflect that on anyone else or take something that isn't something that I feel, and I didn't say worthy of me, but it was demeaning at the time. It was a different place and time. And I don't think we should have to put up with that. And frankly, that served me really well because that is what got me to Nashville. And I loved that. And I'm still there today. The second time was a big risk as well, was joining Macquarie. And I think it was kind of funny, at least from my perspective. There was a group of us who wanted to develop a business and find somebody who would take us in as a group. And I just basically, this was about 10 or 12 years ago. So the internet was good, but it wasn't quite as extensive as it is today. And I just Googled Macquarie because I had lived in Australia once and I said, oh, I know that Macquarie might be interested. And I Googled who's the boss of asset finance at Macquarie. And it was this gentleman named Gary. And I nervously picked up the phone and called his number in Australia, and I was like, hey, he didn't answer. His EA answered and she was lovely. And she was like, yeah, thanks for your information. Why don't you send us an email and I'll let him know. And I basically had said, I've got a business plan I wanted to put forth to him. And I don't know this guy. I don't know, I know enough about Macquarie to be dangerous. But we did it. I'll just say that we did it. We made it. We brought a business plan forward. We backed ourselves as a team and came into it. And it was all based off of a random phone call I made. And by the way, there were connections on the back end. Someone, after we had our first meeting, someone said, hey, did you used to work at GE? I used to work there. I can give you the ins about the bank. And so as I see people reaching out and talking about jobs, and I've had a bunch of people reach out to me about different jobs at Macquarie, I'm like, hey, by the way, you might know this person. Or LinkedIn is huge too, right? Who else do you know that's connected to that person who can give you some better flavor as to the culture of the group you want to join or not? And culture is, as we all know, is 100% critical to whether you want to stay at a certain company or not. Like stay at a company, move into a different group, or do you actually think it's time to make a huge move in your career? Does that help, Robin, at all? I know I go a little off script with these, but because I think there's so many things that people need to think about and already do, but giving them the power that if you actually realize that you have something that other people need, it gives you that confidence to go make those phone calls that are difficult to make at best.
Accepting that demotion must have been scary at the time for you. But then you turn around and you have this incredibly inspiring story where you're like, I just picked up the phone and called somebody and I made it work. Like you've had quite a career.
Yeah, look, it's tough to do, but if you find those people who along the way have said something really positive to you, and you might not think that you made a difference, but they'll remember you, right? Like one gentleman I called, he was mad I didn't take his job, and he said, well, they're getting a good person, but I'm disappointed you didn't join me. And I had met him maybe 2 or 3 times. That's it. But they can see something in you if you bring the passion to the table. Like, I really love this subject. I'm passionate about joining your company. I love that you all do this. I mean, that's what people want to see. And I think maybe I had a lot of caffeine that day, but it gives you that boost of confidence to promote yourself. And by all means, ladies and gents, you have to promote yourself. No one else is there to do it. They may help you along the way. And I'm not saying be egotistical and arrogant, but make sure that they see the qualities you have and what you've done from a work perspective that really bring things along.
So let's talk a bit about your current role. What are your priorities and what about it excites you the most?
So yeah, my current role is so different. And I, like many others, probably felt like, well, what do I know about being a COO? And I'm, again, being very transparent in that I asked someone first, I said, do you think I can do this job? Like, do you think I can be a COO? My skills were in, leadership training, running a business, and some other things. Like, yeah, but it's running a business, but you're running now an operational business to ensure that the rest of Macquarie can really thrive. And what I had to say to myself was like, I'll learn, I'll figure it out, I'll lean on people, and I'll surround myself. There already is a strong talent group, so I didn't have to build any talent. But I'll surround myself with those people and ask them questions and not be afraid to ask questions, because there will be stupid questions, not knowing a job when you're coming into it. But at the same time, you can build out your own passions. So my priorities, Robin, very good question. And somebody gave me this excellent advice a couple months ago when I first started. They said, make sure you put it on a page. Look at yourself in this role after 30, 60, 90 days. Say, here are my priorities. And remember to reflect back on those as you started. So my current priorities are obviously continuing to ensure that the business across the board, because we manage tech and operations and HR and business services, that those are all handled. Macquarie is very big on ensuring that we cover all our risks. When they're not covered, we accept those risks, but we make sure we're aware of what they are. That's why I think the group has done very well in terms of its transactions. Robin, when you first started saying, and Macquarie does this, and this, I was like, oh yeah, it's actually a fantastic organization because it does so many things. And it's done them on the back of people just having an idea and saying, I want to run with this. What do you think? Can I do that? And you're like, yeah, like me, starting a business. Somebody said, sure, bring your people on board. We'll give it a couple of years and see if it works. And it did. It still exists. So my priorities are still bringing those groups together from a technical side and ensuring that anything that Macquarie is doing, whether we're doing acquisitions or integrations, or looking at retention, which obviously for anyone these days is a big issue. We're doing it the right way. Can we still continue to build this culture of entrepreneurialism with risk avoidance or risk acceptance along the way in this atmosphere? And part of that for me is walking the talk when it comes to, hybrid work model and burnout. So one thing, Robin, that I don't think we plan to talk about, but is the fact that I think last year was a huge year for burnout among everyone, whatever industry you're in, working too hard, not having boundaries, working from home, trying to manage children and daycare and illnesses and, you name it. It was across the board without being able to do the fun things we like travel to other countries or have holidays that aren't canceled continuously. So one of the priorities for me is walking the talk, being back in the office a couple days a week, or when I'm in New York, I come to the office. When I'm in Nashville, I work from home. Primarily, that's the gist of things. But making sure that people see that I have a work-life balance, and I don't think I had that last year. I was burnout and stressed, and I came into this role, and I thought I'm going to focus on the things that can make a difference. And I think the people are the thing that makes a difference. So how do we make sure that we take care of our people? And find ways to make work more efficient so that they're not actually, burning the candle on both ends. Let's not tell them to do everything. Let's have them focus on the priority areas and know that some things will take longer in this day and age with everything we're all dealing with, supply chain issues, the continuous COVID, illnesses that hit families these days. It's not even just individuals, it hits whole families. So how do we work with that and prioritize our people so that we can encourage retention and moving forward this year? So that's my current plan.
You touched on it a little bit already, but specifically as a leader, how have you pivoted during what has been incredibly challenging? Even I think we're going into the third year now of this pandemic.
Hugely challenging. I'll say this, and this is personal to me, but I know I feel much better about myself when I feel healthy. So getting to the gym, trying to eat right, which is incredibly difficult. Unless you're a really good planner ahead of time, which I'm not, but also mentally keeping strong. So I'm sure I'm not alone in that. First, when COVID hit, we're like, I'm going to learn a new language. We bought a piano, and I went and took, I didn't take lessons, but I did it myself, like online every day, and the piano sitting in the corner collecting dust. But what I have found over the past, I'll say 6 months, because I feel like we've been in stages with COVID, right? There was the initial stage, and there was some lockdowns. The summer was good, then the winter was bad. And as we got further into this, not being able to see my colleagues was really hard on me. I mean, I am not that kind of person. I don't like working from home all the time. But I started using my gym friends as my team. So we kind of formed a COVID little group. And that was the most important thing to me for probably a year and a half of this crisis. And enabled me to be better when I was on my 100th Zoom meeting of the week, because I knew that there was something that I was looking forward to outside of work that brought it together. I just am so happy to be able to see people again. And I hope that whoever is like me is able to do that as well, because not everyone can go in the office. So finding something that you get to look forward to in addition to the Zoom calls is really important. Finding a passion. Maybe it wasn't the piano for me. I thought it was, but I'm looking at other things and getting excited again about a challenge outside of work. For instance, this will sound silly, but I'm doing a master class online about the science of sleep and how important it is to everyone, to get a good night's sleep. It really actually is restorative and helps you think more. But anyway, it's about finding a passion and following that for yourself. It just makes you a better person at work. And it makes you more authentic to know that you're not just working 18 hours a day or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If that helps.
So, again, you've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but since most people have been working remotely for almost 2 years now. I haven't met almost any of my coworkers at all in person. And the video meetings they're great, but like you, I miss connecting with people. I'm such a people person. And what do you do to make sure that you're able to build and maintain relationships and keep your team connected in such a dispersed work environment? So what's working for you with remote work?
Yeah, and Robin, it's fair because I'm saying all these great things like going to the gym and all, but my team. So for in between this new role and leaving my mining job, I had 18 months served as the head of leadership, talent, and culture. And the goal was literally March 1st, I was moving to Sydney of 2020. I rented a house. I've never seen the inside of it. Someone else went and found it for me so that I could land and be on the job, immediately. I never got to Sydney, but I still did that job for 18 months. So my entire team was based in Australia. I had to find a way to bond. Like there was no choice. And it was a difficult time because the time zones weren't in our favor, but we just made it fun. So part of what we said was like, let's make this fun. What does it take for us to have, serious meetings, but at the same time get to know each other? Some of them did get to know each other a little bit, but not too many because they were, they went through some pretty harsh lockdowns after we did, and finally figured it out. Anyway, something just popped up on my screen about office updates. I don't want my laptop to shut down while we're talking. So we just started sharing personal stories. One gentleman's wife is a drummer, and he would share some videos of her drumming with famous people at the Opera House. And we just, it's really about being authentic and getting that trust and the psychological safety to be able to talk with each other more on a personal level than just work. And I think that connection served us well for what we needed to do. I mean, in addition, Robin, you got to think about what your work is. And in our work, it was about part of what we were doing is developing leadership programs. So you have to get personal in those. There's a lot of personal in some of those stories you tell in programs. And as you build cohorts of teams, that is the authentic style that comes across. So authentic information, authentic sharing is one way to do it. And I know, I think now what I'm finding, and I'd be curious about other people, but now that we're somewhat back in the office and then went back home during Omicron, our meetings are becoming like, we've all gotten to know each other really well. So now the meeting parts are actually pretty succinct, right? Everyone's like, okay, we don't need to chit chat for way too long anymore. We can, for those people that aren't your buddies, but they're like people that you need to talk to, they become more succinct. And so my 30-minute meetings are 20 minutes and we get to the heart of the matter, and you have 10 minutes to kind of get your head back in without being constantly hang up, Zoom. So I think that is starting to change for the better. Even if we can't get back in the office, I think we're getting to a connection point where we can be more efficient and make sure we have time for, for other things. So it's tough. I don't think anyone has a magic answer. We talk about wellness. We talk about make sure you stand up from your desk or your seat or your office. It's tough. They're all wonderful ideas. It's actually setting yourself some boundaries and sticking to them so that you're a better listener when you are on your Zoom calls.
Yeah, I love that. Authenticity, boundaries, and efficiency. All great advice. So what are some of the main things that you think women can do in this climate to help further their career progression and earning potential, or at least not lose ground?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope we're not losing ground. This is a time when women should be really focused on the things that we're allowed to be transparent about. I mean, I'm finding that it's much more a discussion point when people are taking roles or looking at roles. The comp, how does it look? So from that perspective, don't be afraid to ask. I mean, you cannot be afraid to ask. I mean, I had to ask, right? I'm at a position where we don't look at comp when you move roles. And I was like, yeah, but I'm going to be living in New York City versus Nashville. And they're like, and I was like, well, you would look at me funny if I didn't ask. Like, it's just one of those things where you have to actually put yourself forward and say, can you tell me more about the comp and what's the model here and how does that work? So first of all, don't be afraid to ask. I hope we do that early on in most of the people we talk to, because I want to make sure people know that they're going to get compensated for their job and the effort and the consequence, not the consequence, the outcomes that come out of what they put forward. So that's important. But what can they do to further their career at this time? Look, I see a ton of people reaching out and saying, hey, can I have a conversation? Who can you connect me with? I've met people, or I've talked to people that I've never met for like a year and a half that maybe were referred by someone else. And we establish a relationship. I'll call it a relationship in terms of giving each other advice. And those ultimately are leading to, hey, I think I have an opening for you. I found that is over here, or you might want to look at this company. And so sticking with some relationships and networking that are purely based on just discussions you can have about some topic. So there's a woman who I've become friends with, even though we've not met, who just happened to be, in a class with someone I knew who said, you two might connect. And over time, I've gotten involved in her females in finance work. And it's super interesting. And I never would have known about it except for I had met her. So I think the networking connections are really key to continuing that career progression. But if someone offers their help, Robin, like if I said, Robin, why don't you call me? I think we should just continue talking. Like you're really interesting. And I think what your skills are just super, but I don't have a role for you, but if you want to keep talking, I'd love to take them up on it. And then you book the time in their diary. Just say, look, you can cancel this, but every month I thought I'd check in for 20 minutes and chat about how it's going. Most people don't mind that. Most people might say, hey, if you put an hour in my diary, because we say diary here, but in my calendar every month, that might be a lot, but if it's a casual catch up, no one's threatened and they really appreciate helping other women. It's what we're here for, right? Like if someone's helped me, I want to help someone else, or I want to help 10 other people, because we all need a leg up sometimes in getting into the network or figuring our way around a company, and we just haven't had the connections for as long as maybe some of our counterparts who are male. Not putting any men down or saying that they have it easier, but certainly we can all use the connections and the networking right now. If you have time, reach out.
I think networking is just pretty good general advice. I think I've been hearing that since I was in college.
And it doesn't hurt, right? I mean, it's if it's genuine, if somebody calls me and just says like, I'm looking for a job, here's what I do. I'm like, okay, well, I can help you, but I'm probably just going to refer you then to the recruiting team. So find a connection for me or help me understand how we can talk together so I can get to know you better before I try and find something that fits you, because I don't know. I don't know your personality. I don't know your skills. I don't know what you want or why you want it, right? Like, have you looked internally yet in your own company? Like, do you love your culture, but you're just stuck in your job, or you're stuck with a manager that maybe you don't see eye to eye with? How can we help you sort through some of those angles? I think are some of the interesting things to talk about, Robin, when we have chats with people. It's just and doing it in a non-threatening manner. You're not judging them. You're just having a conversation.
Yeah, I love that. So for women who would be interested in a women specifically at Macquarie, what advice do you have for them? Are there any key skills or characteristics that you think would be key for success at this company?
Yeah, Macquarie's, like I said, really interesting group. And we have a lot of different businesses. So if you're business minded, there's a lot of different groups that are there, as well as tech and operations and HR. You can almost, there's almost something for everybody. I think of that when people want a job, like, oh, I can find you something. I don't know where it is, but I'll find it. But when our key skills that I think when people are interviewing that they're looking for are critical thinking. So really taking an eye to things and not just believing everything you hear. How does that customer look? Do they look authentic? Does their story match up? Thinking through that is important to us, and matching that up with people who love data. We love people who love data and the science behind data. I will be honest, I'm not a huge data person from a background perspective, but I am from a finance perspective. So since a very young age, I think I was counting money when I was 5, and I was a treasurer, like for all my organizations. I was never the president. I was always the treasurer, and I didn't mind that. It was something I enjoyed doing, and I don't know why, but maybe it always helped me feel like I was moving forward when I was looking at things adding up dollars and cents. But data is a big thing, and we also look for passion. So if you're, and I think this is easy for everyone to understand. If you're interviewing with somebody, first of all, it's hard not to be nervous. So you can always say, sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's my first time I've been interviewed with anyone in 10 years or whatever it is. Kind of like dating, right? Like you're like, I haven't been on a date in so long. And the thing is, though, get them to relax. So, make sure you're comfortable in your surroundings that you're in. And when you're talking to them, but make sure they understand what you're headed towards. What's your passion? Why are you looking for this role? Not just, hey, I saw this ad, I'm sure I can make a lot of money. That's really not going to help anybody get ahead. But showing your passion in addition to your critical thinking. And also, I'll say this, and I don't know why I'm going down the interview angle, because you all haven't applied for jobs yet. But if you're going to, we have a great website you can look at, and some incredible job openings. Especially, there's 2 for me. One of the things we think about is there are some people who interview based on, pretty strict criteria. Like if you're interviewing for a credit job, credit analysis, they might ask you very technical questions. So be ready for those. And if you're interviewing for something in a different field, what kind of questions might they ask, or what areas will they dive into? But a lot of times we ask some of the things you asked, Robin. Tell me about a time that something's been very challenging for you, and what did you do about it? And you might think they're just kind of routine questions, but they help us understand the person. Like, do you like a challenge? If you hit a challenge, can you make it through? Resilience is a big factor that comes into play, because, when you work for a multinational company, you need patience, because sometimes the decisions are made somewhere else and you can't have immediate answers. So knowing that you have stakeholders to work through. But those are some of the things Macquarie looks for. Obviously, we would like people to be, talented, skill-based, resilient, and have a lot of enthusiasm for the job. Frankly, for me, I want people who are going to be a culture carrier, come in and join and carry forth this culture of caring about people while continuing to progress the business. Those are the key themes for me.
That's great. So we're going to take some questions from our audience now. If you have any questions, please be sure to put them in the Q&A box. So first one we have, early on, you mentioned following your passion, but what if you don't have one or know that yet? What advice would you give to those of us still looking to change careers?
So that is a very interesting question, because I did say follow your passions, and I didn't learn that my passion was people until further in my job, when I was able to look back and say, someone said, do you miss whatever? And I said, no, I miss the people. I miss my clients because they're people. I don't miss the clients because they're clients. So if you don't know what your passion is, keep trying different things. But one of the things that I did was look into, and I will say more recently than 20 years ago, was look into master classes. Like, if any of you have that app, there's a masterclass app that you can take little courses and things. I mean, they're 10 sessions of 15 minutes each, right? You're like, does that interest me? Yes or no? Does this interest me? What am I sticking with that's interesting? I mean, I think, like I said, kids in college these days get to take a lot of electives, and that's kind of what you're trying to do, right? When you take an elective, do I like this? Can I see myself making this a career? Or am I going to go do something for 2 or 3 years and decide after that? We have a lot of people that will come in at an entry level and just do something for a couple of years and go, as I got to know the organization, I really think I want to join this crowd. That's super interesting to me when you talk about leadership or D&I or market operations or the technical side. I want to learn how to be an Amazon web service provider. I want to learn coding. Okay, just get in somewhere that you can do your job really well. And by the way, if you don't do your job really well, you're probably not going to get that opportunity at the next place. So make sure you put your passion into that job that you've taken, and continuing to take part of that time to build a passion project on the side. So a lot of companies, I mean, I hope, because the ones I've looked at have always done this, don't mind if you say, I'd really like to try this avenue out over here for 10% of my time. Like, I'm going to do my job, but I want to try out, something and, prototype something, or can I join this committee? That can be something that drives you to a new area. And I know I'm going a little bit long, Robin, but one other thing that I didn't know I would enjoy was interviewing people for promotion. So people are put up for promotion, and then they have an independent person call 10 people that are on their list. And frankly, I've gotten to know 10 people that I never would have called or talked to. And the areas that they work in are fascinating. So maybe that would be something I would want to do later. Like, hey, I really liked that area that they work in. It sounds like they're super excited. They're creative. They get to do whatever. I wouldn't know that unless I signed up to do this interviewing. So join something that might take you down a different angle, but also helps you learn about what your own creative juices might do or might not do.
Love that. So throughout your career changes, what kinds of sacrifices would you say we'd have to be prepared to make, if any? Time away from family, pay decrease?
Sacrifices are there. Look, we do talk a lot about work-life balance, and I don't think that it's always a 50-50 balance. So you have to decide how much of that sacrifice you're willing to take among, like, what's your passion versus what you've also committed to from a family perspective or other things. There's also, I mean, when I took those several moves overseas, I left my family, and I took their grandchildren, and that wasn't really pleasing to most people. And the sacrifice was that every vacation I had to come home and visit. That was all I did. I probably should have done 10 other things when I lived overseas, but choices you make. And we talk a lot about choice management. That's something that each individual has to decide. I really hope in this day and age that people aren't making as many sacrifices as they did as females coming up the ladder as when I did. Because I think my family meaning my kids may have felt the brunt of it more because I had to work harder or be funnier or, be like the guys. That's when you need to make a change, or when you're really bored. That's when you need to step up and have a discussion with your manager. And no one asked this question yet, maybe they will, but I always come back to this, Robin, because people think about imposter syndrome, like, can I actually do that job? I look at our CEO. She was never the CEO before. She continuously built, led bigger and bigger businesses, but she didn't say, oh, I don't know, never been the CEO, so I'm not going to take the job. She took the job and she put her own stamp on it and has excelled. And so one of the things we don't talk about a lot is the fact that we're all imposters. I mean, there's no other way to make it if you're not stepping up and challenge yourself in a new area. Everyone has done that. So you're not alone if you take a job where you don't know everything. You shouldn't know everything, or else it's not going to challenge you. Sorry, that was a little off the question, but I remembered that it's a point I wanted to make, that it's okay to change careers and step into something new. Everyone has had to do it at some point.
Yeah. So Joan Rosenberg asks, my biggest challenge in moving from Marcom into corporate social responsibility has been getting past the recruiter and in front of the hiring manager. Any advice on getting recruiters and managers to take a chance on someone with an indirect background?
It's a great question, Robin. Because one of the things we're trying to do, I said, look, I look at job ads, and if they don't tell me who the hiring manager is, I'm like, how do I know I want to be in that group? But also, how do you get to them? So it's a good question. I think it's really putting it forward to the recruiter to say, listen, this is something I'm very interested in. I have this background to get into this, and I'd like you to at least put my resume forward. And if it's someone you don't know, like you can't find a link to in any way, shape, or form, that's really the only avenue you have. But to continuously press and say, I do have these skills. I think I can make this, and please let me talk to them, or say, I just need 15 minutes with the hiring manager. But it's also okay to ask to speak to someone, if it's an open role that people know about, someone else in the group, so that you can say, hey, I just want to know more about the position. Don't be asking for that interview, but say, I'd like to learn more about the position from someone in the group. Do you think you can hook me up with, someone else who works in that group so I can hear about it? And then you kind of, that's an easy way to interview without interviewing. And if someone did that to me, I'd be like, oh, that's really great. I think we should make sure that we interview so-and-so for the role, because they're talented, they've got skills, and they can transfer.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, so someone else asks, thank you so much for everything you've shared so far. Any advice on navigating the question, what are your salary expectations? What you shared about asking about compensation up front is so important and helpful. However, I'm struggling to figure out what a reasonable request would be. I've worked at a small nonprofit org for the past 11 years, and in my career change endeavor, the positions I've been applying for happen to be with large for-profit companies that have very different salary scales than what I'm used to navigating.
That, Robin, that's a tough one. I think sometimes they're transparent, sometimes they're not. And so what I would suggest is, and I don't know if this always works, but asking the recruiter, can you give me the range that you're talking about first? It's become pretty, not litigious, but I think there's certain states where they won't allow you to not tell the salary information ahead of time, so that you don't get caught in something like that, because women deserve to get paid, number one, what men get paid. And number two, you should be paid market, not according to what you currently make. So I think what they're usually trying to figure out is, can we afford you? And, my only, involvement in something like that was one of my family members moved from a nonprofit to a for-profit recently. And she was, oh my God, she was over the moon. She said, I got a $15,000 raise and a signing bonus of $5,000. And she'd been doing the same thing for years and years and years. And I'm pretty sure I know her expectations. And I mean, she was over the moon. She didn't ask for it. So she didn't know what to expect. And she said, it's so much better, I'm not going to push it. And I said, well, you can still negotiate if you want, but if you feel it's good enough for you, then you should take it. But I think there is a difference in those two, and I think you need to maybe do some research and see what you can find on other websites. Glassdoor might give you some indication, but that is a big change. Nonprofits certainly are only funded by donors and individuals and fundraising, so it's much harder for them to pay what a corporate would do, and the benefits actually make a difference as well. Might not be that helpful, but I do know it's a tricky subject when it comes up, and I would advise putting it back on them and probably not answering it too directly unless you're extremely well paid and you're looking for even more.
Okay, so Natasha Wolf asks, would it ever be silly / unprofessional to reach out to someone you don't know at all, LinkedIn, for example, to just say, I think your job is cool. Would you have 15 to 20 minutes to tell me about it? A lot of people may not respond at all. So is there a better way to go about it?
Yes, that's a great question, Robin, as well. And I do get those occasionally. And what I look at is, what are they looking for? Because sometimes it's someone who's just trying to sell me a product. So be very clear that I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just have found your profile and it's interesting because, and explain yourself a little bit. I'm coming from X and this is what I do today. And I'm trying to find, I'm trying to listen to stories of people who have made a change. So give more of yourself in that question than just asking, because otherwise you might say, oh, they're probably trying to sell me something or a new product or join this group. I've gotten a lot of those lately, and I'm like, nope. But if it was a person who asked a personal question, or I've had people reach out that I don't know who are like, how do I find internships at Macquarie? And I can point them in the right direction. They just might not have found that, but they found me.
Yeah, I love that. Make it personal.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard to turn down a person when they're asking nicely.
All right, so we have another question here. Hi, I often have difficulty describing how my skills are transferable in a cover letter. Are employers really looking for people with transferable skills?
They are, and cover letters are interesting too. I'll definitely say this. I don't know how often they're thoroughly read, but only because I'm not in that side of the business. But I really look at what they currently do, and sometimes it has a skill section. So some of them are really finite skills, like I know PowerPoint and Microsoft and Hootsuite and some other marketing terms that may not be familiar with. Sometimes they're very technical like that, and that's fine. You should always put that in there. Those are, by the way, very transferable. But it's also the other skills that I'm talking about, like resilience or data or a go-getter, a utility player. Extremely organized. There's things that you can put in there that do help. So I don't know that you can always connect the dots, but if you say, I'm coming from this background. I mean, oh my God, a great example is a mom who works at home, right? That's her job. Like, I can multitask. I can do this. I can manage schedules, coordinate drivers, deal with tantrums, like, hey, I'll hire you any day. It's the hardest job in the world. And those skills are transferable, whether or not everyone sees that from a cover letter or a resume, not necessarily. But if you're trying to cross that bridge, is what I'm finding is, I know it's hard when everything's digital. So again, finding a way to find out more about the position or the company as you're navigating through, whatever websites that you have to submit your resume. Sometimes those are the difficult ones. You really need to get your personality out there to get that next layer in. But we do look at them, and transferable just means, hey, those are core skills. Maybe we don't call them transferable skills. We call them, these are my core skills that I can build on when I'm in your company doing X. So these are my base skills. Yes, I need to learn some of them, but you're going to have to teach someone, because no one's coming with the exact knowledge of your company.
I love that, core skills.
Sounds better than transferable. I mean, they're transferable. Yes, they are, because these are things I just do.
Exactly. Okay. Troy asks, what is your advice for someone who would love to go into management, but have had individual contributor roles for a while and feel overlooked when applying for jobs internally and externally?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because there are so many people that are excellent contributors, but people go, well, we'll pick this person instead. I think it's showing your leadership skills. So you've got to show it in other areas, whether that is, going into an employee network group and signing up to be the chair or the committee chair, things that are group events at work. There could be a project you decide to lead and just say, look, I'm going to manage this project. And in that, I'm going to have these 3 team members who are going to report to me. It's kind of building your own management of a project that might show you off to those who need to make that decision. You can take management classes, which are online and incredibly important to show how you manage people. I would also encourage mentoring and sponsoring others. That also shows that you care about people and their progress and the outcomes associated with those people. Because otherwise, if it's just you, it's hard to say, it's hard to show that you've done other things. So you've got to actually bring those to the table. So go do them. Find ways that you can learn about being an effective, management or leader. I like the word leader better because, managing people sounds very operational, whereas leading people sounds a lot more inspirational.
Great. Okay, so we have our lightning round question, and I really love this question. We hear from our community often that it is difficult for women to talk about all of our accomplishments and take credit for all of the things that we achieve. Self-promotion can tend to be uncomfortable when you're not used to it. So with that in mind, can you role model for us and share an accomplishment that you are particularly proud of with this audience?
Oh, role model. Okay. Look, I do think one of the key things I am most proud of was my, I've already said it, but it was my phone call to Gary Farrell now 11 years ago, off the back of nothing, and putting forth a business case that we've never achieved exactly what we said we would, because the bank was very different than what we thought it would from a risk perspective. But actually stepping out of my comfort zone and saying, I'm going to go build this business in a new company without really knowing that I could do it was probably my proudest accomplishment, because that, like I said, it still exists today. And now I've been able to join this company, this bank, this group, and move to 3 different jobs while that group still exists. I'm super proud. They're still profitable. They still have a great team spirit. They're making money. I can't say I did that because I didn't do it alone, but I did do that. I made the phone call. No one else did. The 3 guys with me didn't do it. I had to, step up and, I was sitting in my kitchen and just making this very nervous phone call. But I'm super proud because I love working for Macquarie, and I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done that. What other opportunities have we passed up because we didn't do them?
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Like in a good way.
Yeah,
It's like,
in a good way.
Man.
Right? Like, what else could we have done? And it's my, my only sadness is I just think there's so much more out there, but we only have one life. So make sure it counts. Make sure it counts for something that you like doing. And don't sacrifice too much is really my thing. Don't sacrifice your family when they need you. And make sure, and it's okay now to say that to people. Like, it's okay to say, my family needs me, we're going through something, or the kids are sick and you can work from home now. So that's, something we can all do. Just make sure you are honest with your manager if that's what causes some of your concern. And people are pretty empathetic these days. I think the world has changed a lot, and we've learned empathy where we didn't have it before.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, you have quite a story from your very amazing career. So thank you for sharing it all with us today. Somebody else in the comments said this has been so enlightening, and I totally agree.
It's enlightening for me too, and I love it. Like I said, I just hope that everybody follows something that they're passionate about and continues to make, progress in their own journey. It can be small, it can be lateral. Just do something that makes you feel good.
All right. Well, if you're interested in exploring opportunities at Macquarie, then you can check out some open roles on Fairygodboss. And once more, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Fairygodboss. And I can't wait to maybe hear from some of you in the future. Thanks, Robin, so much.
Thank you.